For 28 years, my mark remained cold. They called me unbonded, unwanted, unlucky, just another lost cause. And yet, I never let go of the quiet hope that someone could stir what had long been sleeping. Now, things finally shifted, and I've been given the chance to find out whether I was born to walk alone or destiny was only waiting, patient and merciless, to awaken me with the most devastating fire I never saw coming. The whispers clung to me like smoke, quiet words they thought I couldn't hear. Poor Evelyn Marin. Not a single alpha would ever choose her. Such a waste of a bloodline. But honestly, I'd rather remain alone forever than subject myself again to the humiliation of another choosing ceremony, standing on display like a discounted dress no one wanted to buy. After 8 years of watching younger Omegas chosen before me, I'd learned how to wear invisibility like a second skin, less armor, more camouflage. Still, I found myself once again in the same familiar ritual, adjusting the hem of a dress that didn't belong to me. Delilah's emerald gown clung to all the wrong places on my frame, stunning on her lithe silhouette, but awkward and unflattering on mine, like I was pretending to be something I wasn't and maybe never would be. Stop fidgeting, Delilah snapped, her sharp nails biting into my forearm as we neared the opulent doors of the palace. You're lucky I even brought you. Just try not to ruin this for me. Without thinking, my gaze dropped, a conditioned motion carved by years of quiet shame, and I murmured thanks that tasted like ash. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. You should be. Maybe someone will actually look at you tonight, though I doubt it. Her golden curls bounced as she turned, tossing her next command like an afterthought. Just don't forget why you're here. I need you to carry my things when Troy and I slip away later. My stomach nodded. I wasn't just an afterthought. I was her glorified baggage handler, a silent witness to her midnight affair. And the worst part, it wasn't the prestigious guests ahead that unsettled me. It was the aching emptiness inside me, so constant now that it felt like another vital organ. The royal gala was only held once every 10 years, a rare convergence of all 7 packs, and the ballroom looked like it belonged to the stars, its floating lights glimmering like constellations beneath a ceiling painted in midnight hues. It should have stolen my breath, but all I could think about was how alone I was, the only unmated wolf past 25 in a sea of connection and belonging. Somewhere between arriving and blinking, Delilah vanished, and I was left drifting along the marble edges of the room until a server almost knocked into me, his tray wobbling like a warning. I swerved and collided with a stranger. I'm so sorry, I said quickly, my face flushing as I met the cool gaze of an elder alpha female. Her silvered hair was pulled into a tight, unforgiving knot, and her lips pursed as she took me in. Be more careful, Omega, she said curtly, her eyes landing on the bare skin of my neck. Something flickered in her expression, recognition, and pity mingling like poison. Ah, you're that Marin girl, aren't you? The one who never she didn't finish, but she didn't have to. I backed away, seeking the safety of shadows along the wall, every part of me remembering why I'd sworn off pack gatherings in the first place. They didn't see me, they saw a failure, a blemish on tradition. The defective Omega, the unchosen. I nursed a single glass of champagne that had long since gone flat, watching the room twist in silk and gold, laughter shimmering in the air while pairings sparked across glances and touch. Omegas glowed beneath the eyes of unmated alphas, cheeks pink with possibility. And me. I faded, one heartbeat at a time, pretending the hollowness inside me wasn't screaming. But I knew. I'd always known. Some of us simply weren't meant to be claimed. That's what my mother had murmured after my 5th choosing came and went without a single hand reaching for mine, her voice not tender, but resigned. Maybe you're meant for something else, Evelyn. But what else was there for someone like me? Omegas were born for the bond, raised to nurture, expected to complete. Without it, I was less than half in their eyes. Crushed beneath invisible stares, I slipped through an open set of carved doors and found myself on an empty balcony. The night air met my skin like a balm, cool and soothing compared to the suffocating atmosphere inside. I leaned into the stone railing, gazing at the full moon, silent and silver, and far too distant to care. Why? I breathed, my voice barely a question. Why give me the heart of an Omega if I was never meant to be loved? The wind took my words, scattering them into the hush of rustling leaves and violin strains. My thoughts wandered, as they often did, to the stories grandmother once told, tales of she-wolves who shaped their own fates, who didn't wait to be claimed. Maybe it was time I did the same. Maybe I would disappear, find a human city where no one cared about bonds or bloodlines, and build a life that didn't revolve around a fire I'd never feel. The balcony doors opened behind me then, laughter and light spilling into the quiet I'd wrapped around myself. I turned, expecting Delilah's disdain or another awkward stare. but instead, a young beta stood there, her face bright with urgency. "You're missing it," she gasped, grabbing my wrist without warning. "King Silas is here." I blinked, startled. "King Silas?" I echoed. "The Northern Alpha." She nodded so fast her freckles danced. "Yes, no one thought he'd come. He hasn't been seen at a gathering like this since," her voice dropped, reverent, "since Queen Clara died. Even I knew that story everyone did 8 years ago. The Northern Alpha, the most feared and revered wolf in all 7 packs, lost his mate in a brutal rogue attack. They said the grief broke him, drove him to madness so consuming that entire packs fell beneath his wrath. His vengeance a storm without mercy before he vanished into the frozen silence of the Frostlands. Rumors whispered that he'd bargained with the moon goddess herself, offering a piece of his wolf in exchange for the soul of his mate, and that whatever returned from that deal was only half of what he once was, half man, half ghost, barely wolf at all. And yet, here he was, stepping into a gala that hadn't seen his shadow since the Queen's death, sending the room into a breathless frenzy. The moment we re-entered the ballroom, chaos unfurled. I was swept into the tide, bodies pressing on all sides as everyone surged toward the main entrance, drawn like moths to fire. I tried to break away, but the current of the crowd dragged me forward, locking me into a wall of shifting shoulders and hungry eyes. "I can't see him," someone shouted nearby. "Is it really the Wolf King? They say he hasn't shifted since she died. Why now?" The air turned thick, almost liquid, as the breath of hundreds hung in unspoken anticipation. My chest tightened, lungs constricted by the crush around me. When the tide shifted again, I lost my footing, my borrowed heels tangling with the too long hem of Delilah's dress. Time fractured. I felt myself tipping forward, pitching directly into the cleared aisle meant for the royal entourage, powerless to stop the inevitable fall. I braced for humiliation, cold marble against skin, every eye watching, but I never hit the ground. Heat wrapped around me instead, steady and strong, arms encircling my waist with a grip that felt like command and comfort in the same breath. The world tilted. My pulse thundered. I looked up, and everything inside me stilled. Ice blue eyes met mine, ancient and unreadable, colder than any winter but burning into me like fire. King Silas Graves, the Wolf King, taller than I'd imagined, broader, forged in sharp lines and somber silence. His presence was a force that silenced the very air. A scar ran from his brow to his cheek, a remnant of the day he lost his queen. My breath caught as I tried to speak. "Thank you, Your Majesty," I managed, my voice a tremor. The light from the high windows cast moonlight across his face, but his expression didn't shift, no kindness, no interest. Yet, in his gaze, something flickered. Not warmth, not quite recognition, but something primal. In the space of a heartbeat, everything shattered. A spark ignited at the base of my neck, the place my mark had always lain dormant, silent, cruelly untouched. Heat erupted there, searing through my nerves, flooding my body with a sensation I had never known, the beginning of a bond. Pain and pleasure twisted inside me, impossible to separate, as if my very bones were remembering him. My knees buckled, my soul surged. He caught my scent in the same breath, and I saw the flicker in his eyes, the way his jaw clenched, the way every line of his body drew taut. "Impossible," he murmured, and in that single word, I heard a vow breaking. My skin tingled where his hands had been. I didn't need to ask what had happened, we both knew. My mate had been found. The bond had awakened, and I had found him in the last place. I thought to look in the arms of a king who had already buried one mate and sworn to never love again. The ballroom stilled. Hundreds watched. I felt their stares like blades. King Silas's expression turned to stone. His hand fell from my arm as if burned. Something inside me cracked. The bond quivered, fragile and new, trying to root itself. But he turned, without a word, without a second glance. He walked away, and I was left standing there, alone in a storm of light and silence, every nerve still alight with the fire he'd ignited. He had felt it, I knew he had. The bond was real, and still he rejected me. The crowd whispered behind cupped hands. "Did you see that?" Her mark responded. "Rejected by the Wolf King. Maybe it's a mistake." I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only press my fingers to the mark, now raised and burning on my neck, the mark I had spent a lifetime praying for. My wolf whimpered inside me, confused and pleading. "Follow him," she cried. "He's ours. He's ours." But my legs stayed rooted. Each step he took widened the chasm between us, until the heat of the bond felt like it might rip me in two. I had wondered for so long if I'd ever find my mate. But now I knew finding him wasn't the end of the story. He had to choose me too, and he had made his choice. As though fate itself leaned close to whisper its cruel lesson, I finally understood. There are worse things than never being chosen. There is being chosen by the stars and refused by the one they selected. Have you ever felt your heart recognize recognize its match, only to watch that person turn their back and walk away. My mark pulsed now, not with joy, but with agony, a constant reminder etched into flesh of the mate who would not claim me. I used to fear dying alone. Now I feared something crueler, dying while bonded to someone who would never return the connection. By the time this night ends, I will know whether a mate bond, once lit, can be severed by will alone, or if not even a wolf king can defy what the moon goddess has woven. The crowd shifted around me like I was something infectious, something tragic. Their stares cut deeper than words. Their whispers grew louder. And in the middle of it all, I stood no longer invisible, but marked and unwanted. My fingers trembled as they traced the newly raised design on my neck, the mate mark still tender, as though it had just been carved into my skin by divine fire. After 28 years of nothing, of silence where others had known warmth, the pattern now etched into me felt alien and invasive, like a cruel reminder of what I was given only to be denied. The mark that should have symbolized connection and belonging instead pulsed with humiliation and pain. Across the ballroom, Silas's back receded from view. Each step he took carving deeper into my chest, splitting me open as my wolf thrashed within, howling in anguish, begging to chase after the one who had awakened us. And I did chase without thinking, without planning, only moving, pulled forward by the invisible thread that wrapped itself around my very bones. The crowd parted around me like water breaking against stone, their gasps and murmurs barely registering as I pushed forward, compelled by something too ancient to ignore. Delilah's hand caught my arm with a sharp hiss. "Evelyn, what do you think you're doing?" She whispered harshly, yanking me to a halt. "You can't just follow after the king like some crazed omega in heat." I stared at her, feeling something harden in my spine. "He's my mate," I said, the words simple but heavier than any I'd ever spoken. "And it's obvious he wants nothing to do with you," she snapped, her expression darting nervously from side to side. "You're humiliating yourself. And me while you're at it." Perhaps she was right. Perhaps I was being reckless. But beneath the sting of shame, there was something else burning, a heat that had never existed in me before tonight. For the first time in my life, I wasn't willing to fade quietly into the shadows. "I don't care," I murmured, and even as I said it, I knew I meant it. Delilah stared at me, stunned. "What did you just say?" "I said I don't care what you or anyone else in this room thinks," I repeated, louder now, my voice gaining strength with every word. "That man is my mate. The moon goddess chose him for me, and I deserve to understand why he's running from that." Without waiting for her response, I pushed past her, following the scent that still lingered in the air, pine and snow, and something wild and broken. My mark throbbed with every step I took, guiding me through the vast palace halls like a beacon. Behind me, the whispers swelled. "Her mark burned, did you see it? It's true, after all these years, but he vowed never to take another. That poor girl doesn't know what kind of pain she's stepping into." The corridors unfolded ahead, glittering with crystal chandeliers and marble so polished it reflected my wavering steps. Ancient portraits of wolf royalty watched me with unfeeling eyes, judgment hanging in the silence like cobwebs. Doubt crept into the edges of my thoughts. What was I doing, really? Chasing down a king who had already made his rejection unmistakable. Approaching an unmated omega was already considered bold. Approaching a royal alpha without invitation could be seen as a direct challenge. It was dangerous, punishable, even. And yet, I couldn't stop. Because deep in my core, I knew he had felt it too. The bond wasn't imagined. It had lit like a flame between us. I turned another corner and slowed at the sound of voices drifting from a door left slightly ajar. One was his, deep, strained, unmistakably his. "You can't remain here," a woman's voice urged, low and insistent. "Not now that she's seen you." "I had no choice," Silas replied, each word clipped and controlled. "The treaty demands my presence." "But the goddess—" "Do not speak to me of her," he growled, his voice suddenly filled with venom. "She already took everything from me once. I won't let her do it again." My heart twisted painfully. He hadn't walked away because he didn't feel the bond, he walked away because he did, and it terrified him. Their conversation dropped to a whisper I couldn't quite make out, so I crept closer, my curiosity outweighing caution. The floor creaked beneath me. Silence slammed through the room like a wall. A moment later, the door flew open, revealing a tall woman with striking copper hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Behind her stood Silas, framed in firelight like a myth made flesh, his expression thunderous. "Well," the woman said, her lips barely lifting in a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "your mate seems far more determined than you gave her credit for." Before I could retreat, I was ushered into the room, the door closing behind me with a final sounding click. It was a study richly appointed, lined with shelves of old books, the scent of ash and parchment clinging to the air. The fire in the hearth crackled, casting his sharp features in gold and shadow. He looked carved from stone, his expression unreadable, but the tension in the room was thick, oppressive. My wolf whimpered softly within me, aching to move closer. "Leave us, Vivian," Silas said without looking away from me. The woman's brow creased with worry. "Silas, are you sure now?" With one last wary glance, she disappeared through the door, leaving me alone with the Wolf King. The moment she was gone, the silence expanded, filled only by the crackle of fire and the pounding of my heart. I stood still despite the tremor in my legs, trying to hold my ground as he stared at me. His eyes traveled slowly from my face to my throat, where the mark now pulsed like a living flame. "Why did you follow me?" he asked, voice low but dangerous. I swallowed. "You already know the answer." He began to move, circling me with slow, measured steps, like a predator assessing whether I was a threat or prey. "Do I?" "You felt it," I said, softer now. "Back in the ballroom, when you caught me. The bond, the burn." He paused behind me, so close I could feel the heat of his body on my back, though he never touched me. His breath stirred the fine hairs at the nape of my neck. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. "Evelyn Marin," I answered, barely above a whisper. "From the southern wilds." He repeated at my name, my lineage as though testing the taste of it. "Evelyn Marin. You're from the south then?" I nodded once, unable to meet his gaze with him standing so near. He stepped around to face me again, and I looked up, heart hammering. For the briefest moment, his expression softened. The glacial blue of his eyes warmed with something I couldn't quite name: sorrow, maybe, or memory. "It doesn't matter what I felt," he said finally, each word heavy and deliberate, "because I can't be what you need me to be." The space between us pulsed with heat, thick with the weight of everything he refused to say aloud. My chest ached, the echo of his rejection still reverberating in my bones, but I refused to look away. "Why are you doing this?" I asked quietly, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. His jaw tightened, a muscle ticking beneath his skin as if holding back words he didn't want to speak. "Because I have no bond left to give," he said flatly. "It was sacrificed a long time ago." I stared at him, disbelief rising like a tide. "That's not possible," I insisted, touching the mark on my neck as his eyes followed the motion. I felt it form. "It's here, it's real. A bond like this doesn't ignite unless both wolves participate." His gaze darkened. "Some truths aren't meant to be questioned, little wolf," he murmured, voice dipping into something colder, edged with warning. "Go home. Forget this night ever happened. Find someone who can offer you what you truly deserve." The words were meant to push me away, but instead they fueled something fierce inside me. "You don't get to decide what I deserve," I said, my voice sharpened by years of silence. "The goddess gave me 28 years of nothing. And now, at last, she's revealed my mate. I won't walk away from that just because it's inconvenient for you." His expression shifted in an instant. His pupils narrowed, and with a growl, he closed the distance between us in one step. "Inconvenient?" he snarled, his breath hot with fury. "You know nothing of what this means." His scent enveloped me, that unmistakable mix of pine, snow, and something ancient and raw, and my wolf surged forward, desperate for contact. I clenched my fists at my sides, fighting the instinct to bare my throat to surrender. But that wasn't what either of us needed right now. "Then explain it," I said, challenging him. "Make me understand why you're denying what both of us can feel." For a heartbeat, I thought he might. Something shifted in his expression, something unguarded and hollow. A flash of pain so profound it nearly knocked the air from my lungs. But then, like a shutter slamming down, the softness vanished. "My reasons are mine alone," he said, voice stripped bare. "But know this, even if the moon goddess herself stood before me, I would never claim another mate." The finality in his tone should have shattered me. Instead, it lit a fire under my resolve. "You say that," I replied softly, "but your wolf already made the choice. It recognized me the moment you touched me, just as mine recognized you." A growl rumbled from his chest, low and dangerous. "My wolf doesn't choose anything anymore. I do." I didn't flinch. "Then explain the look in your eyes when you caught me. Tell me why your scent shifted, why your hands wouldn't let go." "That wasn't reason, Silas. That was instinct, the one thing even you can't control." For a moment, time stretched taut between us. Then everything in him snapped. He surged forward, caging me in with his arms as he pressed me back against the wall. His face hovered inches from mine, all fury and fire, and something deeper, something he didn't want me to see. "You want to talk about instinct?" he growled, voice low and dangerous. "Let me show you what happens when I stop trying to fight it." His breath brushed my lips, and I could taste the torment in it, saw the way it warred with his control. My wolf howled with triumph, certain he was about to surrender and claim what the goddess had decreed. Instead, his hand caught my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. "Look at me, Evelyn Marin. Really look." And I did. Beyond the frost of his eyes, past the fury and resistance, I saw something fractured grief that ran deeper than blood, sorrow that had never healed. "I am not the mate you've been waiting for," he whispered, voice thick with buried agony. "I'm not whole. I'm barely even wolf anymore. Whatever I had to give died with her. What's left belongs to ghosts." I lifted my hand slowly, hesitating as my fingertips hovered above the scar that sliced down his cheek. "Then let me decide what I deserve," I said, barely above a breath. His eyes closed, just for a second, his body swaying toward mine as though he couldn't help it. The bond between us thrummed, alive and rising with our closeness, full of potential. But before I could touch him, he recoiled, retreating as if I had burned him. "It doesn't matter what you think you want," he said coldly, his tone shuddered and final once more. "I've already made my choice, and that choice isn't you." The words cut sharper than any blade, but I refused to let him see how deep they struck. Instead, I straightened my spine and met his gaze without wavering. "You're lying," I told him, quiet and certain. "Maybe you think you're protecting me. Maybe you've convinced yourself you don't want this. But you can't lie to the bond, Silas. It knows the truth, even if you won't speak it." His hands curled into fists at his sides, his breathing uneven, struggling for control. "Leave, now, or I will have you removed." His ultimatum hit like stone, cold and final. Maybe it was truly over. Maybe I had been foolish to believe a shattered king could be healed by a girl no one had ever chosen. But as I turned toward the door, fate whispered again, soft and cruel. I placed my hand on the handle, then spoke without turning around. "You can deny me, Your Majesty," I said gently. "You can pretend this never happened. But one day, even you won't be able to lie to yourself anymore. And when that day comes, I'll still be here." I slipped out before he could respond, the door clicking softly behind me. Only once I was alone did my control break, and a single tear slipped free, trailing down my cheek. Behind the heavy wood, something shattered a glass against stone. And then came the roar. Guttural, devastated, the sound of a wolf caught between rage and loss, and something he could no longer run from. My wolf stilled, strangely calm, her voice a whisper in my mind. "He feels it too." I pressed my palm to the door. "I'll wait for you to stop fighting, Silas Graves," I whispered, knowing he could hear me with those alpha senses, "for as long as it takes." Then I walked away, each step slow but sure. The ballroom shimmered ahead, but the atmosphere had shifted like the tide. The moment I reappeared, every gaze found me. Whispers surged in every direction, voices rising like static. I ignored them all. Let them talk. Let them stare. I crossed to a corner where the light didn't reach, where I could breathe again. Something inside me had changed, something irreversible. Yes, I had been rejected. Yes, it still ached. But for the first time, I didn't feel ashamed. I wasn't unloved because I was unworthy. I was powerful because I dared to want more. I brushed my fingers over the mark at my neck, now warm and pulsing, a flame that would not go out. My wolf stirred, not with despair but with clarity. This bond between Silas and me, this fragile, undeniable thread, was real. He could deny it, fight it, rage against it, but he couldn't destroy it, and neither could I. As the gala continued behind glittering masks and crystal laughter, I kept searching for him across the sea of silk and scent. But the Wolf King did not return. It didn't matter that he'd walked away. Something inside me, instinct or intuition, or maybe something far older, told me we weren't finished. The moon goddess hadn't waited 28 years to cross our paths just to let us walk in opposite directions. That wasn't how destiny worked. I had spent my life being called the forever unmated, a title whispered like a curse, like a wound that would never heal. But now I carried a new name, one I held onto like a vow. I was the mate of King Silas Graves, whether or not he was ready to speak it aloud. Let them call me what they will. Let them pity me. The truth had changed, and deep down, we both knew it. They say you die twice in this life. First when your heart stops beating, and again when your mate draws their last breath. Silas knew that death. He had felt it.
8 years ago, I cradled Clara's broken body in my arms, her blood melting into the snow, and I felt something inside me die with her. When the bond snapped, it ripped through my soul like a blade, leaving behind an emptiness that never stopped echoing. I gave the last of my wolf to the goddess that night, not for vengeance, not even for peace, but so that Clara might pass into whatever came next without pain. And now, standing alone in my study, surrounded by the shattered remnants of control, I found myself holding a ghost. Evelyn, that damned Omega. The moment I caught her, something ancient stirred inside me, an echo I thought I'd buried so deep even the gods had forgotten it. Her scent lingered on my skin, honey and wildflowers, something bright and living and cruelly intoxicating. It clung to me like memory, like temptation. My hands trembled as I poured another glass of whiskey third. Fourth, I didn't know. The burn of alcohol couldn't touch the other burn, the one that had sparked to life where my mark used to rest. With a snarl, I hurled the crystal glass into the fireplace. It shattered, flames rising in protest, igniting with the splash of liquor. The sudden light revealed the chaos around me, chairs overturned, books scattered, a mirror cracked down the middle, slicing my reflection into something monstrous. Feel better? Vivian's voice cut through the air, cool and unimpressed. She stood in the doorway, watching me with that same steady expression that had both comforted and infuriated me for years. I didn't turn to face her. Go away. Instead, she stepped inside, closing the door with deliberate calm. Her eyes swept over the destruction. So I take it the conversation with your new mate didn't go as planned. A growl escaped my throat before I could stop it. She is not my mate. The fresh mark on her neck would suggest otherwise, she replied, unfazed. The bond doesn't lie, Silas. I turned sharply. It's impossible. You know what I gave up. You were there. You saw what I sacrificed to save Clara's soul. Vivian's features softened, her voice gentling. I know what you believe you gave up. That doesn't make it true. Rage surged again. In one breath I had her pinned to the wall, hand pressed to her throat, not enough to harm, but enough to remind her who I still was beneath all this ruin. Choose your next words carefully, I growled. Her gaze never wavered. The goddess took your grief, Silas, not your ability to feel again, and certainly not your right to be loved. The words struck deeper than I wanted to admit. I released her with a shove, turning away as shame roared louder than fury. Even now, 8 years later, the mention of Clara still turned me into something feral. Leave me, I muttered, but her voice, calm and resolute, stayed. The Northern Pack doesn't need a ghost pretending to lead them. It needs you whole, and you're not anymore. When she finally left, her words echoed in the stillness, not whole. Was that truly what I'd become? Just a hollow shell shaped like a king? I didn't want to believe it, and yet I couldn't deny the truth of her voice. Evelyn's face surfaced in my mind, unbidden and immediate, the quiet defiance in her eyes when I told her to leave, the unshakable strength in her voice when she said she would wait. How could she understand the war inside me so easily when I couldn't even name it? The wind shifted through the open window, and her scent drifted in again, catching my senses like a hook. My bones remembered her, the way she'd fit against me so perfectly when I caught her, the way her pulse had quickened beneath my touch, the way the mark had bloomed on her skin like a star being born. I moved to the window before I could stop myself. Below, the palace gardens were alive with soft conversation, flickering lanterns, and the glow of moonlight. I scanned the crowd, telling myself it was to make sure she had left. Just to be sure, but I saw her immediately, standing alone near the marble fountain. The silver light turned her hair into dark silk, her posture quiet and drawn, one hand absently brushing the mark on her neck. My chest tightened at the sight. Guilt rose, foreign and unwelcome. I tore myself from the window with a curse. Madness, that's what this was. I had sworn a blood oath. I had made a vow. I had given up the part of me that could bond again, so why did I still feel her? Why did something inside me stir like old roots breaking through stone? Why did I want, against all reason, to go to her? My gaze caught on the portrait above the hearth, Clara, painted in golden light just weeks before she was taken. Her smile eternal, her mark visible, her eyes full of life. For 8 years, I had used that portrait to remind myself of everything I had lost, everything I had buried. But now something had shifted. For the first time, I looked into her painted eyes and didn't feel rage, or shame, or guilt. I felt forgiveness, not for those who took her from me. I would never grant them that, but perhaps, just maybe, I could forgive myself. My voice cracked the silence. What would you tell me to do, Clara? I asked the image. Would you tell me to keep grieving forever? Or would you tell me to live? Of course, there was no answer, but I already knew. Clara had never been selfish. She would not have wanted this, would not have wanted me like this. The thought steadied me. I smoothed my jacket, drew in a breath, and turned toward the door. I would speak to Evelyn again, not to claim her, not yet, but to explain. She deserved to understand the reasons I had turned away. That was the least I owed her. The corridors had grown quiet, most of the guests having drifted outside for the midnight ceremonies. Her scent grew clearer the closer I came to the garden entrance. I followed it, steady and resolute. But just before I reached the doors, something new hit me. Another scent, familiar, unwelcome, and it stopped me cold. It was a scent I hadn't encountered in 8 years, but one my wolf would never forget, blood and rot hidden beneath the sharp sting of expensive cologne. Rogues. They were here inside my territory, inside my palace. The scent alone was enough to make the beast within me rise, snarling and ravenous. Without thought, my path veered, instincts taking over. I followed the trail through the quieter corridors that branched off the main hall, deeper into the skeleton of the palace. My steps quickened as the stench grew stronger, guiding me down narrow servant stairs and through forgotten stone passages. They'd chosen the eastern wing furthest from the celebration, isolated and silent. I reached a half-open door just as voices drifted out, low and male. "Are you sure it's her?" One asked. The king's reaction confirmed it. Another answered. He caught her, and his mark responded. "I saw it happen. After all these years of hunting," the first voice said slowly, almost amused. "How convenient that his second mate just shows up at a royal gala. The goddess has handed us the perfect bait." My breath froze. Evelyn. They were talking about her. A slow, violent pressure built in my chest, rage blooming like wildfire, hot and suffocating. My claws pushed through skin without permission, sharp tips cutting into my palms as I curled my fists. The pain kept me grounded, stopped me from tearing through the door before I had answers. I needed to know how deep this went. "When do we take her?" one of them asked. "Soon, but not here. Too many eyes." A pause. "Then we'll wait until she's alone. And then we finish what we started 8 years ago." Time stopped. The air between us thickened with memory and murder. These weren't just rogues. These were the same bastards who had taken Clara from me. The ones I'd hunted but never caught. The ones who haunted my past like smoke. And now they wanted Evelyn. Something old and primal surged through me, darker than vengeance, older than reason. "Mine," it roared. "She is mine." I didn't wait another second. I kicked the door open with a snarl that shattered silence. The two males inside turned, startled but not fast enough. Their recognition flashed across their faces, then came fear. "Your Majesty," the taller one greeted smoothly, recovering quicker than expected. What an unexpected in my palace. I growled, circling them slowly like a wolf preparing to strike. "After all these years hiding like cowards, you dare walk through my doors." The shorter one's hand twitched toward his jacket. "A blade, maybe. Poison. It didn't matter. We simply came to enjoy the gala," he said evenly. "We received an invitation, same as everyone else." "Lies," I snapped, my voice breaking with fury. My shift trembled under my skin, the old barrier weakening. For 8 years, I hadn't been able to complete it, not since Clara. But now, my wolf clawed toward the surface, driven by something stronger than anger. "You came for her," I snarled. "For Evelyn." The taller one's eyes narrowed, something like satisfaction settling across his features. "So the rumors are true. You can bond again." His voice lowered. "Looks like the goddess didn't take everything from you after all." His words unlocked something violent. Clara's warmth fading in the cold, her pulse weakening under my hands. These men had watched, waited, let her die. My hands shook with the need to destroy. "You will never lay a hand on her," I said, voice shaking with restrained fury. "Too late," the shorter one said with a sneer. "Our associates are retrieving her as we speak." Time fractured. My pulse thundered. "Where?" I demanded, pinning him hard to the wall, my grip tightening with warning. "Where is she?" "The Western Gardens," he choked out, gasping against my grip. "But you'll be too late, just like before." A snarl tore from me as I slammed him harder, the stone wall cracking behind his skull. Something inside me shifted, the broken part I'd believed lost, forever rising with a force I hadn't felt in years. My wolf surged forward, not in pain this time, but in protection. In fear. For her. As guards stormed in, alerted by the chaos, I turned to them with command burning in my veins. "Take them to the northern fortress," I ordered. "No one is to speak with them. No one touches them. They're mine." And then I was moving, running faster than I had in years, driven not by duty, not by vengeance, but by the bond. The same bond I had denied now pulled me with magnetic force, each step slamming into the stone like a drumbeat of fate. Her fear reached me first, tangled in the scent of blood and panic. Then I heard her breath catch. I burst into the garden, clearing to find 3 rogues cornering her, pressing her against the stone perimeter wall. Evelyn's eyes found mine, instantly relief and fear colliding in her gaze, confusion flickering in the depths as if she didn't quite believe I'd come. "Step away from her," I said, voice stripped of everything but authority. A growl sat just beneath the surface, vibrating through my ribs. The rogues turned. The largest, a scarred beta with a jagged mark across his temple, stepped forward while the others kept their positions. "This doesn't concern you, King Silas," he said, his tone mockingly respectful. "Our business is with the Omega." I looked at Evelyn again. Despite the threat, despite the cornered space and outnumbered odds, she stood unflinching. Her jaw was tight, her body still. She didn't cower. She dared, and something in me cracked open wider. "She is under my protection," I said, each word iron and unshakable. The beta laughed. "Protection? from the same king who turned his back on his own mate. How poetic. Fire surged beneath my skin. Last chance, I warned. Instead of listening, he signaled. The two behind Evelyn lunged. The beta charged me. My body answered before thought could. For the first time in 8 years, I shifted not fully, not yet, but more than I'd managed since the night Clara died. My hands became claws. My teeth sharpened. My senses exploded into sharpness. Power surged. The rogue never stood a chance. I met him head-on and sent him flying across the clearing with a single blow. My bones remembered how to protect. My wolf remembered how to fight. I turned as the first attacker reached for Evelyn. He fell before he could touch her. His neck snapped clean in my hands. The second managed to slice her arm. I saw red. My roar split the night as I yanked him off her and broke him like twigs beneath my boots. The beta tried to run. I was faster. I caught him by the throat and pinned him to the same wall where they'd cornered Evelyn. My claws dug into his skin. "Who sent you?" I demanded. "Give me the name." He coughed, blood coating his teeth as he smiled. "You already know." "Why now? Why her?" I pressed. He laughed again, the sound hateful even as his life drained. "Because she matters," he whispered. Just like the last one. His gaze shifted past me, toward Evelyn, and then his lips curled with satisfaction even as death crept in. "You always bleed for your mates, don't you, Sela's Graves? Because you cannot be allowed to bond again." That's what the dying rogue said. His voice, thick with venom and triumph, echoed in the space between us, and with those final words, everything came into focus. Their attack on Clara had never been random. It had been deliberate. They hadn't just wanted her gone, they had wanted me broken. Not merely grieving, but permanently severed from the power of a mate bond, crippled in the one way that truly mattered. And if Evelyn truly was my second chance, then everything, the timing, the whispers, the sudden appearance at the gala had been part of something larger. The beta smirked, knowing I understood. "Kill me if you must," he said, voice rasping with blood. "It won't stop anything. Others will come. They'll never stop." And in that moment, as the truth unraveled, I stopped hesitating. With a single silent movement, swift and clean, I ended him. He crumpled to the ground, and silence swept through the garden. I turned then, slowly, expecting to find fear in Evelyn's expression, revulsion, maybe even horror. Blood soaked my hands and splattered across my clothes, none of it hers, but no less damning. Yet when I met her eyes, I didn't see fear. I saw something far more dangerous. Understanding. "You came for me," she whispered, voice soft with disbelief. There was wonder in her words. I stepped toward her carefully, unsure if the sight of me would undo everything that had just passed between us. "Are you hurt?" I asked. She shook her head but then winced slightly, fingers lifting to her arm. "Just this," she murmured, revealing a shallow cut. I reached for her without thinking, brushing my fingers across the injury, checking for depth, infection, any excuse to touch her. And the moment our skin connected, the bond surged between us, pulsing like a heartbeat we shared. Her mark shimmered faintly in the moonlight, glowing where I had once denied its existence. My chest tightened. "I felt you," I admitted, the truth rough in my throat. "When they went after you, I felt your fear through the bond I convinced myself didn't exist." Her eyes didn't flinch. They searched mine, not for anger or apology, but for honesty. "Why did you come, Silas?" The question wasn't laced with accusation. It simply asked for truth after too many evasions. "Because I couldn't stand the thought of losing you," I whispered, "even though I have no right to claim you." Her hand lifted, hovering briefly before her fingertips pressed gently against my cheek. The contact unraveled me 8 years of restraint, of cold control, of walls built so carefully they all splintered beneath her touch. "What did you mean?" she asked gently, "when you said you gave part of your wolf to the goddess?" Her voice didn't tremble. She asked like someone who was willing to carry whatever truth I gave her. I closed my eyes, her name ringing in my thoughts. When Clara died, I couldn't accept it. I bargained with the moon goddess. I offered her the part of me capable of forming another bond, anything if it meant Clara's soul could pass peacefully into the beyond. Her fingers didn't move from my face, but the bond still formed, she said quietly. "I felt it. You felt it." I opened my eyes, meeting hers. "It shouldn't have been possible." A faint smile curved her lips. "Unless the goddess never accepted your sacrifice. Unless she had other plans." Her words settled over me like ash, soft but impossible to ignore. I had never considered that my offering might have been rejected, that the goddess, in her silence, had chosen not to take what I gave because she already had another path in motion. Before I could answer, shouting echoed in the distance. Palace guards, drawn by the sounds of battle. Reality surged back in a blood-covered king, 3 dead rogues, an Omega who never should have been touched untouched by danger. Without hesitation, I made another choice. I took Evelyn's hand. "Come with me," I said, guiding her through the shadows of the garden, along paths only royal blood knew. "Where are we going?" she asked, but didn't resist. "Somewhere safe," I replied. "Until I can understand what's happening, I need to keep you close." Storm clouds rolled above us as we reached the outer edge of the palace and entered the private wing reserved for the royal family. Every instinct in me screamed to keep her within reach. She wasn't just a stranger tied to fate anymore, she was a target. And no matter how conflicted I still felt, I couldn't let her be unprotected. I wouldn't survive losing her too. As we reached my chamber, her pulse beat strong beneath my fingers. I hadn't released her wrist. I didn't think I could. "Stay here tonight," I said, the words catching as I tried to clarify. Not as I trailed off unsure. "Not as mates?" she asked, her voice barely above a breath. "No," I said, though something inside me screamed at the denial. "As someone under my protection." Evelyn studied me, her eyes full of something that felt ancient, as if she saw the full weight of my past and chose to stand beside it anyway. "And tomorrow?" The question went deeper than she knew, or maybe she did. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "we figure out why the goddess gave me a second mate when I'm still shattered from losing the first." Her fingers found mine, lacing through them with quiet strength. "Maybe that's exactly why she sent me. Not to replace what you lost, but to help you heal." The words slid into my heart like sunlight through ice. Not a transformation, not yet. But something shifted. A crack in the armor. A place where warmth might one day return. I'd told myself for 8 years that I couldn't love again. But now I wondered if I'd ever truly had a choice. They say an alpha's greatest duty is to protect his mate at all costs. But no one tells you what to do when protecting her means pushing her away. The bond between us burned quietly now, undeniable in its presence. Each breath she drew echoed in my own lungs. Each flicker of her pulse called something home inside me. I had built walls meant to withstand war. And yet this one small omega had slipped past every defense without even trying. By the time the night bled into dawn, I knew the choice loomed before me. Embrace this bond and risk the same soul-deep devastation that once broke me, or sever it entirely and lose something that was never meant to be lost. Pale light crept through the curtains, stretching slowly across the room. Evelyn slept in my bed, curled on her side, her breathing even and peaceful. She hadn't meant to stay there, had just sat on the edge while we talked. But sleep had claimed her quickly, exhaustion finally catching up. I hadn't slept at all. I couldn't, not with her scent in the air, wrapping around me, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt since Clara. I sat in the chair by the window, watching her, committing the delicate rise and fall of her breath to memory. The way moonlight had softened every angle of her face until she looked almost unreal. I'd spent 8 years surviving. Now, I found myself wondering if I was ready to live again. Sometime before sunrise, she'd started to whimper in her sleep, caught in some nightmare her body couldn't escape. I hadn't even thought before rising from my chair. I simply moved to her side and reached for her hand, needing to offer comfort. The instant our skin touched, her entire body relaxed. The tension melted from her features, replaced by a calm so profound, it stilled something in me too. Even unconscious, she responded to the bond, as if every part of her had already accepted what I was still trying to deny. Now, as morning painted the mountains gold beyond the frost-glazed window, I sat at the edge of everything, torn between what I'd sworn never to allow and what fate had forced into my hands. The garden attack had shifted the entire landscape. My enemies knew who Evelyn was now. They understood what she meant, and that meant she would never be safe again, not unless I fully claimed her or pushed her so far from my world that even the rogues wouldn't find her. Neither path sat easily with me. I watched her in the silence, curled up small and still against the vast expanse of my bed. Her hair fanned out across the pillows I'd used for years, without ever once imagining someone else might rest there. One hand tucked under her cheek, her mouth soft with sleep. The sight of her did something dangerous to me, something primal. Mine, the thought whispered, "She belongs here." I shook my head hard, trying to banish the idea. That way led straight back into the fire. I had loved and lost. I had buried a mate. I wasn't sure I could survive doing it twice. But then her eyes opened slow, certain, and they found mine immediately. No panic, no disorientation, just quiet certainty, as if even in dreams she had known where I was. "You didn't sleep," she said softly, her voice still husky from the hold of slumber. I didn't bother denying it. "How do you know that?" I asked. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "The bond," she murmured. "I can feel your exhaustion." Of course she could. The connection between us grew stronger with every moment. Soon it would be more than just vague impressions. Soon it would become a language of emotion, instinct, need. Unless I ended it, unless I tore it away before it could anchor me again. The thought stabbed deep, but I couldn't stop thinking it. Evelyn sat up slowly, wincing as her bandaged arm pulled tight. I'd done the dressing myself after we arrived. I'd tried to avoid contact, tried to be clinical, but even brushing her skin had nearly undone me. She didn't look away as she whispered, "Thank you for saving me." My response came sharper than I meant. "Don't thank me." She blinked at the sudden edge in my voice. "If not for me," I continued tightly, "you never would have been in danger." Her head tilted slightly. "The rogues, they were the same ones who killed your first mate, weren't they?" I gave the smallest nod. I couldn't say it aloud, not yet. Clara's death still clawed at my throat when I tried. "And now they're after me because you're my mate," I said, and the words came out as a growl. "Because they know what that means." "What you mean?" Silence fell like snowfall, soft and heavy. She pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. There was something heartbreakingly young about the way she curled in on herself, yet her eyes remained steady. "What does it mean?" she asked quietly. I turned away from her, walking to the window. The mountains outside loomed like sentinels, sharp and white, the same ones I'd fled to after Clara died. Cold, silent, remote. They had matched my soul. "An alpha is strongest when bonded," I said at last. "The mate bond enhances everything: power, perception, strength, healing. It completes us." When Clara died, my voice faltered. I lost more than a mate. I lost a part of who I was. The strongest part. Her voice followed, close and careful. "And your enemies want to keep you weakened." I turned back. Her eyes met mine, full of understanding. "Yes," I said. "Exactly that." She touched the edge of her mark, fingers lightly tracing the skin. "But the bond formed anyway, despite the sacrifice you made." My hands clenched at my sides. "It shouldn't be possible." "And yet," she whispered, "here we are." Then she slid off the bed and approached me, bare feet silent on the cold stone floor. She stopped just out of reach. "Maybe the goddess rejected your offering," she said gently. "Maybe she knew you would need me one day." Her words struck me like a thrown blade, fast, sharp, and unerring. I had never even considered the idea that my sacrifice had been declined. I'd built my entire grief around the belief that Clara had found peace because I gave up the ability to bond again. What if I'd been wrong? But Evelyn wasn't finished. "Or maybe," she added, "she knew I would need you." I looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" A flicker passed through her expression. "I've been alone all my life," she said, voice barely audible. "The forever unmated. The omega no one wanted. Do you know what that does to a person? To be overlooked, pitied, treated like you're defective." Her voice trembled slightly. "To wonder if you're even capable of being loved." Her pain sliced clean through me. I knew what it meant to carry something broken beneath your skin. "There is nothing wrong with you," I said, stepping closer. "Not one damn thing." And when I looked into her eyes, it happened. Something inside me cracked wide open. She didn't flinch. "There's nothing wrong with you either, Silas," she said gently. "Being broken isn't the same as being flawed." No one had spoken to me like that in years. Not since Clara. Everyone tiptoed around my grief, whispered about the king too dangerous to confront. But not Evelyn. She stood there like her place had always been in my world. Unafraid. "You don't know what I've done," I whispered. "The blood on my hands." "I saw what you did in the garden," she replied. "You protected me." Without hesitation. "That was different, was it?" she asked, and something in her voice tugged at my wolf, called it forward like a tide rising. It stirred inside me, stronger than it had been in years. It wanted her. Us. I stepped closer, helpless to stop myself. "What do you want from me, Evelyn?" Her answer was soft, unwavering. "The truth." The space between us burned, not with danger, but with all the things I hadn't said. All the parts of me that had started to thaw the moment I caught her in the ballroom. She was becoming the beginning of something I had sworn would never rise again. And yet here we were. Her presence called to something deep inside me, parts I had buried so long ago I thought they'd turned to dust. And the thought of losing her to the same enemies who took Clara from me, it terrified me more than anything I could name. "You want the truth," I said, voice rough with emotion, every word torn from a place I didn't know how to soften. "The truth is, I don't know what this is between us. I don't know why the goddess would give me a second mate when I'm still haunted by the first." Evelyn didn't flinch. She looked directly into me. "Do you still love her?" The question was so simple, so piercing, it stopped my breath. "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "I will always love her." And I meant it. I always would. But instead of hurt, I saw something else in her eyes: acceptance. "As you should," she said gently. "True love doesn't vanish with death." Her quiet wisdom floored me. This woman, this omega who had been overlooked, cast aside, dismissed for years, stood in front of me with more emotional courage than anyone I'd known. "But love," she continued, softer now, "can grow. It can make space for more, without erasing what came before." Her words hung between us like an offering I didn't deserve. I didn't know what to say, didn't know if I could take what she was offering. Before I could find the words, a knock broke through the stillness, sharp and decisive. Vivian's voice followed from the corridor. "Your Majesty, there's news about the rogues." Evelyn's heartbeat quickened, and though I hated to break the moment, I stepped away from her and called out, "Enter." Vivian stepped inside, and though her gaze lingered on Evelyn in my chambers longer than usual, she said nothing about it. The prisoners gave up the location of their base, she said briskly. It's just as we feared. The Eastern Rogue Alliance. They've regrouped. Rage simmered beneath my skin, barely contained. How many? I asked. At least 50, she replied. They've taken the old mining town in Blackridge Valley. Our scouts say they're preparing to move. Move where? Evelyn asked before I could. Her voice was steady, but I could feel the tension running through her. Vivian glanced at her, then answered directly. They plan to attack the palace at nightfall. The air in the room turned heavy, the weight of what was coming pressing down on us all. Vivian left soon after, headed to prepare our defenses. Evelyn and I were alone again, but the air was different now, charged with the knowledge that time was slipping through our fingers. They're coming because of me, she whispered, arms wrapping around herself as if trying to disappear into her own skin. I crossed to her, gripping her shoulders before I could stop myself. No, I said firmly. They're coming because they've always wanted to destroy me. You're just the newest reason. Her eyes found mine, glimmering with emotion she tried not to show. What are you going to do? She asked. What I should have done 8 years ago, I answered, a cold certainty settling into my bones. End them, every last one. She didn't recoil. Instead, she reached up, her fingers brushing mine. Then let me help. I flinched back, her touch too much. Absolutely not, I growled, shaking my head. You'll stay here, protected, while you risk your life. She shot back, voice sharpening. No. My wolf surged at her defiance, dominance rising in me like a tide. This isn't up for debate, I snapped. You are my... I stopped short, caught in the truth I didn't want to say. Her eyes narrowed. I'm your what, Silas? Your mate, the one you refuse to claim. Or just some obligation you're trying to protect out of guilt. The words struck like claws to the chest. I couldn't have it both ways. Couldn't keep her close and pretend she was nothing to me. The air between us pulsed, thick with things unspoken. My wolf paced just under my skin, pushing me toward her, demanding we close the space between us. Claim her, it said. She's ours. But still, I hesitated, caught between what I wanted and what I feared. I can't go through that kind of loss again, not with you. Her anger faded. She stepped closer, slow and certain, until the heat of her body reached mine. Then don't push me away, she said. Let me stand beside you, not behind you. My forehead dropped to hers, the contact grounding me. Her scent honey, wildflowers, something fiercely alive wrapped around me like a promise I hadn't earned. I don't deserve this, I whispered. You. A second chance. Her hands lifted, cradling my face with such tenderness it threatened to undo me. That's not your decision to make, she said. It never was. Before I could respond, the air split with the sharp blare of alarms. The warning system. My blood turned to ice. Vivian's voice echoed over the palace communication system. Breach at the eastern wall. All warriors to defensive positions. Evelyn's breath caught. We both knew what that meant. They're already here, she said. It was supposed to happen at nightfall. Blackridge had been a distraction. Or the prisoners had somehow warned them. Either way, it didn't matter. The palace was under siege, and this time the enemy had come to my doorstep. The wind shifted, bringing with it the unmistakable stench of rogue wolves. Dozens, maybe more, surrounding the palace. I turned to Evelyn. Stay here, I said, striding to the weapons cabinet. I pulled out a silver dagger and pressed it into her hands. Lock the door behind me. Let no one in but me or Vivian. She took the blade, but her eyes stayed locked on mine, fierce and unrelenting. I can fight, she said. Not today, I replied. Please, I need to know you're safe. She looked ready to argue again, but then she nodded once and lifted the dagger with quiet determination. Don't you dare die out there, she said, her voice tight with emotion. Not when we have so much unfinished between us. For the first time in years, I smiled. Not the hollow kind I'd given to appease others, but real. Is that an order, little wolf? A promise, she whispered, rising on her toes and pressing a kiss to my lips. Brief, blinding, absolute. Come back to me and we'll figure the rest out. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe for a moment. That one kiss burned through every wall I'd ever built. Before I could pull her closer, she was already pushing me toward the door. Go, protect your people. With one last look, I stepped through, and the door locked behind me. The palace had become a hive of motion. Warriors rushed through the corridors. Staff were being moved to safe zones. Every second counted. We hadn't faced an assault like this since the old wars. But this time, it wasn't just my kingdom at stake. It was my mate, and I would not fail again. Maps stretched across the central table displayed glaring red markers where rogues had breached our outermost defenses, the spread of danger creeping in like bloodstains across parchment, and my voice cut through the tension as I demanded a number. How many? I asked, eyes locked on the tactical display. At least 70, Vivian replied, her tone grim, far more than what our scouts had estimated. A cold ripple slid down my spine, the realization hit like a strike to the chest. They had been waiting for this moment, counting on our distraction with the prisoners to execute their true plan. It would seem so, Your Majesty, Vivian confirmed as I tracked the rogue positions, watching the pattern of movement unfold with a rising sense of alarm. They're not attacking randomly, I said, narrowing my eyes. They're targeting specific locations. Every approach to the royal wing, she added with a solemn nod. My heart dropped, the chill reaching my core. Evelyn, the word barely passed my lips before I was moving, bolting from the command center and tearing through the palace at a speed I hadn't summoned in years. The bond flared inside me, pulsing in panic, guiding my path with primal urgency as I flew through secret corridors and hidden passageways only the royal bloodline knew. When I reached my chambers, 2 rogues were already at the door, clawing and slamming against the reinforced oak, their snarls echoing through the hall. The fury that erupted within me was volcanic, scorching every thought as I charged with a roar that shook the very walls around us, my shift unleashing without hesitation, more complete and primal than anything I had felt since Clara's death, claws unsheathed, teeth bared, muscles exploding with power as the wolf surged forward to protect what was mine. The rogues didn't even see it coming seconds later. They were down, motionless on the floor. Evelyn, I called out, pounding on the door. Are you hurt? The lock clicked and the door swung open to reveal her face, relief blooming in her eyes as she whispered my name. I pulled her into my arms without thinking, holding her tightly, feeling the thunder of her heart against mine, grounding me with the knowledge that she was safe, that I hadn't arrived too late. We need to move, I said, releasing her though every instinct screamed against it. They're targeting you directly. Her grip on the silver dagger was unshakable, knuckles pale with tension. I'm ready, she said, and together we moved quickly through a hidden route carved into the palace centuries ago, leading toward the underground bunker built for moments like this. Behind us, chaos rang out, snarls, clashes of bodies, steel against bone, and the heavy metallic scent of blood thickening in the air. Though my pack fought with unmatched ferocity, we were outnumbered, and I could feel it in the vibrations of the stone under our feet. We were almost there, so close to the tunnel entrance, when the ceiling ahead of us gave way with a deafening crash, blocking the path with a wall of crumbling stone and plaster. Dust choked the air as 5 rogues dropped from the breach above in a perfect, coordinated ambush. I stepped in front of Evelyn immediately, pushing her behind me with a low growl. Stay back. The largest stepped forward, his smirk sharp with recognition. King Silas, he sneered, voice soaked in venom. At last we meet. I knew him instantly, not by his face, but by the scent that brought back a nightmare I'd lived too many times. Damien, I said, the name tasting like acid. His smile deepened. You remember. I'm honored. I remembered all of them, every face that stood by while Clara bled out in my arms. His gaze slid to Evelyn, who stood firm even as her fear shimmered just beneath the surface. And now you've found another. How convenient. His presence flooded me with memories, crimson snow, Clara's lifeless stare, the silence when our bond had snapped, but this time, instead of crumbling beneath them, I felt my will harden. I would not lose again. You should have killed me when you had the chance, I told him, voice low, laced with steel. He laughed, cruel and careless. Oh, but death would have been too easy. We wanted you alive, broken, a shell of an alpha. But now that you've been gifted another, mate, he bared his teeth. We can't allow that. The bond between Evelyn and me flared again, fierce and unrelenting, feeding power into every corner of me that had long since gone numb. Evelyn, I said quietly, never taking my eyes from Damien when I move, take the 3rd painting on the left, there's a secondary passage. Run! No, she said firmly, her voice slicing through the fear. I'm not leaving you. Her words stopped me. After all I had done, my rejection, my fear, she still chose to stand beside me. Damien laughed again, mocking and cruel. How sweet, the shattered king and the cast-off Omega making their final stand. Before I could respond, they attacked, a blur of muscle, claws, and fangs. I met them head-on, the ferocity of my wolf unleashed in full, a surge of strength I hadn't felt since the days before loss hollowed me out. I moved through them like a storm. 3 rogues fell fast, blood blooming across the stone floor, but 2 remained. Damien and his lieutenant, both skilled, both dangerous. Then I heard Evelyn's cry. My head snapped around to see her grappling with the lieutenant. The silver dagger plunged into his shoulder even as his claws tore across her side. The sight of her bleeding broke something final inside me. With a roar that ripped through the walls, I lunged for Damien, catching him in the throat, my claws sinking into flesh and bone in one clean, merciless blow. His dying words sent ice through me. It changes nothing. The Eastern Alliance won't stop. Not until one of you is dead. I let his body fall and rushed to Evelyn, slumped against the wall. Her hand covered the wound at her side, red seeping through her fingers. "How bad is it?" I asked, my voice rough with panic. "I'll live," she gasped, forcing a weak smile. "Though it hurts like hell." Relief warred with fury as I gathered her into my arms, lifting her with care but urgency, already heading toward the medical wing. Her pulse fluttered beneath my fingers, fragile and fast, but steady enough. In that moment, everything became sharp, undeniable. I had spent so long fighting her, fighting the bond, fighting the very idea that I could be given something beautiful again. But for what? To avoid a pain that might never come. To cling to a vow born in grief instead of hope. As the world narrowed to the woman in my arms and the heartbeat echoing in sync with mine, I made my choice. Holding Evelyn in my arms, this stubborn, fearless Omega who had stood beside me even after everything I'd done to push her away, I felt something inside me settle at last, as if the truth had been waiting to rise since the moment I first caught her in the ballroom. She was mine and I was hers. The bond we shared hummed between us with quiet certainty, and I leaned close, my voice rough with emotion as I whispered against her hair, "I choose you, Evelyn Marin. If you'll still have me, I choose you." Her eyes, hazy with pain but shining with unmistakable hope, met mine with a smile that curved her lips despite the tight grip of agony in her body. "About time, Your Majesty," she murmured, her fingers curling weakly into the fabric of my shirt. "I was beginning to think I'd have to get stabbed just to get through that thick skull of yours." Despite the blood, the threat, the chaos still spiraling around us, I laughed, a sound that scraped its way out of my chest like it hadn't been used in years. Somehow, this impossible woman had broken through every wall I'd ever built, every line I'd drawn to keep myself untouched by the past. As the echo of that laugh faded, I pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle, reverent, sealing a vow that had finally taken form. "When this is over," I murmured, "when you're healed, I'm going to do this properly, a true mating, if you'll have me." Her answer came with a glow, pained but radiant. "I've waited my whole life for you, Sela's Graves. I think I can wait a little longer." The bond we shared no longer felt like a wound or a burden. It was alive, vibrant, a force that wrapped around us and pulled us into something neither of us could deny. I had once sworn never to love again, never to risk losing what I'd already buried. But as I looked into her eyes, I understood what I hadn't before: some risks were worth taking, and some connections were too sacred to refuse. They say when a mate chooses you a second time, it's forever, not just instinct or fate, but willful, soul-deep surrender. The first bond comes in a rush, primal and inescapable, but the second, when chosen through fear and pain and uncertainty, is the one that binds you past death itself.
I rose from unconsciousness slowly, like breaking the surface of dark water, every inch of my body aching with protest. Pain greeted me first, sharp and deep along my side, each breath a deliberate, measured act. Then warmth, the press of a hand around mine, the gentle stroke of a thumb across my knuckles. Finally, his scent reached me, pine and snow and something darker and richer, something that made my wolf stir in recognition. "Sela's," I whispered, even before my eyes opened, knowing instinctively he was near. His grip tightened as his voice wrapped around me. "I'm here, little wolf." When I blinked my eyes open, I found him seated beside the bed, looking as if he hadn't moved for days. The dark smudges beneath his eyes and the disarray of his clothing told me more than words ever could. He hadn't left my side. He looked wrecked, exhausted, and achingly beautiful. As the silence stretched, memories surged back: the ambush, the fight, the searing agony of claws slicing through my ribs, and his voice, ragged and broken, as he finally said the words I'd longed to hear. "How long?" I rasped, my throat dry. 4 days, he answered softly, his thumb still tracing comfort into my hand. The wound was worse than we realized. The healers weren't sure. His voice cracked just slightly, and when I looked closer, I saw the fear still lingering behind his eyes. He'd thought he'd lose me. I could feel it now through the bond, no longer a tentative thread, but a growing force. His emotions beat against mine. Relief, anxiety, fierce protectiveness, and beneath it all, something tender and quiet and constant. "You stayed," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice," he replied. Then he helped me sit upright, carefully arranging pillows behind my back, his every movement cautious and patient. The shift pulled at my wound, drawing a hiss through my teeth. "Slow," he murmured. "The healers say it'll be tender for a while longer." I nodded, realizing only then that I was wearing silk pajamas I didn't recognize, in a bedroom I'd never seen before. "Where are we?" "My private chambers," Sela's said. "I wanted you close." The simplicity of the statement made something inside me melt. After rejecting our bond so forcefully, he now couldn't bear the idea of distance. Then, like a wave crashing over me, memories that weren't my own surged into my mind, not mine, but his, carrying me through smoke-filled halls, the terror when my body went limp in his arms, the roar that broke from him when the healers whispered that they didn't know if I would survive, the desperate plea he sent up to the goddess, offering everything he had left just to keep me alive. My hand flew to my mouth. "You," I breathed. I saw it, I felt it. Silas nodded. "The bond is growing." It does that after he hesitated. "After what?" I asked. His jaw tightened as he stood and walked to the window, bathed in the pale morning light spilling across the mountains. "Your wound was poisoned," he said, his voice low and heavy. "The rogues use a toxin designed to spread. The healers couldn't stop it." He exhaled slowly. "You were dying, Evelyn." My fingers moved instinctively to my bandaged side. "But I didn't die." "No," he said, turning back to face me, something fierce and ancient flickering in his eyes. "Because I did what I should have done for Clara. I gave part of my wolf to save you." His words landed like a thunderclap. It was more than a gesture, it was legend. To give part of a wolf's essence was irreversible, a permanent sacrifice of strength, of power, something alphas only did when the mate bond left no other path. My voice was barely a whisper. "But your shift, won't this mean you'll never fully transform again?" He smiled, quietly, no regret in sight. "A price I'll gladly pay." As if something invisible pulled us together, I reached for him, needing contact, needing to feel the truth in his body that his words had just laid bare. He came to me without hesitation, sitting carefully at the edge of the bed. My voice shook as I asked him the question that had been building in my chest, raw and trembling. Why now? After resisting the bond for so long, after pushing me away at every turn, I needed to understand why he had chosen this moment. Silas didn't answer with words right away. He simply took my hand and placed it firmly over his heart, the steady rhythm beneath my palm saying more than any vow. "Because losing you would have destroyed what little remained of me," he said finally, his voice falling to a whisper. "Because in trying to shield myself from pain, I almost missed the one gift the goddess ever gave me." My forehead met his as I leaned into him, letting the weight of his words settle between us, and the bond pulsed with warmth, stronger than ever, its presence no longer haunting but alive and whole. "What happens now?" I asked, the question no longer filled with fear but with hope. His thumb brushed along my jaw with reverence. "Now you rest and heal," he said, his eyes darkening with meaning, "and when you're ready, I claim you fully, properly if you still want that." The heat in his gaze lit the air between us with promise, but even as the moment thickened with anticipation, I remembered what still loomed beyond us. "And the Eastern Alliance?" I asked quietly. "Their threats." His jaw tensed. "They've retreated for now, but they'll return." His voice carried a steel edge. "When they do, we'll be ready. Together." That word landed differently this time, resonating through my bones like a vow. No longer a fantasy, no longer a distant wish. Together, no longer the girl left behind, no longer the king hiding from grief. Together, we were something unbreakable, something reforged. As if fate had been waiting for this moment, I took his hand and guided it to my side, where under the layers of bandage my wound was healing faster than it should. "I feel different," I said softly, the sensation unfamiliar but not unwelcome. "Stronger somehow." Silas nodded, not surprised. "You are. The part of my wolf I gave you, it's changing you. You'll heal faster now, move with more power. It ties us more deeply than even the bond." "Will I be able to shift?" I asked, wonder blooming in my chest. A real smile touched his lips, reaching his eyes this time. "Maybe. In time." Then something in his expression sobered, his voice lowering. "But there's more, something you should know, Evelyn. Something I learned while you were unconscious." My heart skipped. "What is it?" 8 years ago, he said, each word deliberate, reverent, when I begged the goddess to take part of my wolf in exchange for Clara's peace, she refused. I blinked, not understanding. "Refused? The priestess came while you slept," he said, voice barely above a breath. "She told me the goddess never accepted my offering, because even then, Evelyn, she knew I'd need all of my strength someday. For you." His words knocked the breath from my lungs. All this time, he'd believed he was diminished by choice, hollowed by sacrifice. But in truth, the goddess hadn't taken anything, she had preserved him. "For me, what about your vow?" I asked, the question that had haunted me since our first meeting. "The one you made never to take another mate." A flicker of guilt passed through his eyes, but it faded quickly into something steadier. "Broken the moment I caught you," he said. "My wolf knew who you were. I was the only one foolish enough to keep fighting it." His hand rose, fingers brushing my cheek with aching tenderness. I thought refusing the bond would protect us both, but I was wrong. It almost cost us everything. My fingers lifted instinctively to the scar that traced his brow, the mark left by old wounds and older grief. No more fighting fate, I asked, my voice barely more than breath. No more, he whispered, leaning in until our breath mingled. I choose you, Evelyn Marin, not because the goddess commands it, but because my soul knows yours. Then, without hesitation, his lips found mine. The kiss was soft at first, tender, cautious of my healing wounds, but it quickly deepened, growing urgent as the bond between us flared to life, surging with need and recognition. Fire bloomed beneath my skin as heat spread through every inch of me, his touch like lightning against dry kindling. And when we finally broke apart, gasping for air, his forehead rested against mine as his voice came low and steady. I love you, he said. The words didn't come easily, but they were no less true. I didn't think I could ever feel this way again. Thank you for proving me wrong. Tears gathered in my eyes, so bright, so sharp. They felt like sunlight after endless shadow. As my mate Mark tingled with quiet finality, I lifted my hand and pressed it against his chest, where his heartbeat thudded strong and sure beneath my palm. I used to wonder, I whispered, the memory of countless lonely nights rising inside me. If I'd ever find my mate, if I was even meant to. My voice caught, the truth finally soft and whole. Turns out, he found me first, and as Silas wrapped me gently in his arms, careful of the wound but unwilling to let me go, I knew with absolute certainty I was no longer the forgotten Omega. I wasn't the forever unmated. I was chosen. I was claimed. I was loved. And the waiting, every ache, every moment of doubt, every year of emptiness had all led me here. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. Like, subscribe, and let me know what would you change and what do you want to hear next. See you in the next chapter, my listeners.